Hello, hello, hello. Is the microphone on? No. Can anybody hear anything that I'm saying? It's probably better not. Firstly, some housekeeping. In the event that the fire alarms go off, there are 2 exits. There's a door over here, and you can go the way you came in, and follow the stewards. Follow the stewards. Follow the stewards who will be in the car park advising you. My name's Adam Wishart. I am the convener of a grassroots campaign group called Fund Our Tivy High, and we've got together over the last few months to try and bring focus on the need to rebuild this school. It's a highly rated school with a determined head teacher, ambitious pupils, and it needs a school that's fit for purpose. And the point is, that we need £40 million, and the government has decided they've already allocated £1 billion for school rebuilding, and our question is it going to come to Tivy? Like the Devon County put forward a submission in March, and currently the bureaucrats in the Department for Education and their ministers are making a decision. And, you know, as a voter in this constituency, I'd like to know whether the government's decided to give us the money or to give it to somebody else. And the last bit of and there'll be a question in a minute about that, and surprisingly, George is going to chair it. Thank you very much, George, for coming. This is in the Tiverton Community Arts Theatre, who do a whole range of other kind of artistic events. They're going to have buckets afterwards because it costs something to put it on. And that's about it from me. Oh, I've got clipboards with, if you can write, hopefully people can pass it around and put your name and email address, and then our campaign can get in touch with you for future events and to raise the profile and put funding to Tivy High onto the political agenda. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome along to what I believe is the only public hustings held in the constituency of Tiverton Honiton ahead of next Thursday's by-election. So it's a very special occasion. Thank you very much for making time to come along and to all the candidates. My name is George Parker. I work for the Financial Times. I used to be a student at Tiverton High School. I think the school hasn't changed much in the last 40 years, which may be a subject of some debate later on in the session. I think the last time I was on this stage, I was performing in the school carol concerts, a song inadvisedly called Christmas in Jamaica, which I suspect probably wouldn't have survived the current climate, and hope there's no photographs available of that particular performance. It's great to see Tiverton in the spotlight, as it has been over the last month of the campaign, and looking fantastic on the news bulletins in the summer sunshine. Great to see so much positive energy, I think, in the town. Good to see some old friends appearing on the 10 o'clock news at random, including my Uncle Pete, complaining about the number of leaflets he just received, and Dave Elston, who I think is in the audience with his Boris Johnson scarecrow in the Observer last weekend. So congratulations to all of them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 4 candidates. First of all, I have to pass on the apologies of Ben Walker, the UKIP candidate, who's been unable to attend tonight because of a medical emergency. But we are joined by 4 candidates you'll be familiar with, I'm sure, from the last few weeks of the campaign. So On my left, Richard Ford, the Liberal Democrat candidate. Then my immediate left, Liz Pole, the Labour Party candidate. Helen Herford, the Conservative candidate. And on my right, Jill Westcott of the Green Party. What we're going to do is we're going to run this a bit like, I'm sure you've heard any questions on Radio 4. So the idea is that there are questions which the organising committee have selected, and I'll be calling them out as we go on. I'll try to get through as many questions as I can. There'll be a roving microphone which will come around as well, so people can hear what you're saying. I'm going to be ruthless in applying a 2-minute rule on all the candidates to try to make sure we run this on time. I know that you probably need to do something else later on, including probably watching reports from Tiverton Town Centre and the white ball appearing on the 10 o'clock news possibly. So what we'll do is we'll run until about 9 o'clock, so that's about 75 minutes altogether. I'll try and stop it at 9 o'clock. I'm going to ask all the candidates to start with 2 minutes of introductory remarks, and I will start in no particular place, I think, with you, Jill, if that's okay.
It's my misfortune to be sitting on them. Good evening. It's very good to see you here tonight. Thank you for turning out. And I hope that we will be having some good political discussion. I have met a number of people tonight who've been to this school and who've had a very good time here. So it's good to be meeting here and to see the prominence given to the creative arts, which is often not valued enough in our education system. So, thank you. I've lived in Devon since '92, first in North Devon, where my 2 sons grew up, and I was an assistant smallholder selling vegetables and dairy products. I've been a teacher in primary and secondary education and in adult education, teaching citizenship and environmental issues. So I'll tell you a little about my concerns tonight, and I'm sure we'll have more time during the questions. In this particular situation, I'm hearing a lot of disappointment among people. So I'm very concerned about our democracy. I'm concerned that we should have a political system which we can trust and in which we can have representatives who tell the truth, who pay attention to detail, and who listen to constituents. So one of the things that worries me is the way in which it seems that if the rules are inconvenient, then the rules are changed. So we've seen the Electoral Commission prevented from prosecuting individuals who break the rules. We've seen them having to operate under a statement agreed with government. So they should be fully independent. The same with the ministerial code. That should be implemented neutrally and independently. So the Prime Minister is in charge of its operation. That's a bit like foxes and hen houses.
Jill, you have to wind up quickly.
Thank you. That is my main concern. But I'd also like to speak a bit later on about the housing crisis in rural areas and the difficulty of finding homes, affordable homes.
Okay, Jill, I'll do, because you will get asked about these questions later on. So, Richard, over to you.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for sparing your time this evening, on this beautiful summer's evening, to come in here in the dark and listen to us. I'm Richard. I live in Ufcombe, and I have lived here in our beautiful community since 2010. I moved here with my family, with my wife and my 3 children, of whom I'm very proud. That was after serving in the army as an education officer for 10 years, and I spent time peacekeeping in Kosovo and working in Iraq. I have since worked in universities, principally at the University of Exeter down the road, and since working from home has become possible, I've been working for the University of Oxford. And I'm also very big into volunteering in our community, and I've helped very much in scout groups at Willand and Columpton. During this election campaign, I am going to be campaigning on the cost of living, and specifically the Liberal Democrats would like to see a VAT cut. I'm going to be campaigning on ambulance waiting times, which are the longest in the country, right here. And I'm going to be campaigning on funding for education. So very, very much things that are dear to my heart and perhaps dear to yours too. And my central contention is that here in our beautiful communities, we have been taken for granted by the Conservative government. And as your Liberal Democrat MP, I would bang the drum for Devon, and I would ensure that nobody in this constituency gets left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen.
Thank you very much. Press start. Well, it's been about 3 years since I addressed a school hall of any description, and it was 3-year-olds to 11-year-olds. You're all slightly bigger, so it's a bit different this time. But it's an absolute privilege to be here this evening. Thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing all my ideas and my aspirations for the Tiverton and Honiton. So why me as your MP? Helen Herford, the Conservative. Well, the past 43 years, I have lived in Tiverton and Honiton area, Honiton mainly, born and bred, raised my 3 children there. They went to Honiton Community College, the same as myself. I've created a career. I have taught in all the primary schools right the way through this constituency. My most relevant is Sanford Peveril Primary School, where I was the head teacher, and Columpton Willowbank, where I was the assistant head teacher. I know what it's like to raise a family and be brought up in this area. It's beautiful. I've had lots of ministers coming down to support me, and they're saying, isn't it gorgeous? And I said, yeah, it is. Why would you want to live anywhere else? But you need to see past the beauty. So I've already been talking to them about your priorities that you've been telling me on your doorsteps. I've been telling them about the need for NHS funnelling. We have got 36 billion being funnelled in the next 3 years. I want to make sure that I am representing you, Tiverton Honiton, to make sure you get your fair share. I will be lobbying, definitely, for the new high school for Tiverton. Why would I not? It is my every being and aspiration that children should get the best in education and feel that they are worthy. Absolutely. That goes without saying. Supporting local jobs and bringing investment to our area. Making sure that our rails and our roads lines are improved. I worked in Columpton. I know what it's like to try and get through to the centre of Columpton. We desperately need that relief road. Oh, and there we go. So I'll just say I look forward to talking to you a bit further and saying why actually you need somebody that's going to represent this area, because that's what we need, somebody that's going to go to Westminster and champion Tiverton and Honiton.
Thank you very much. Just on your point about Tiverton being a beautiful area, so I work in the House of Commons as political correspondent, and it's quite interesting the number of journalists who've chosen to come to cover this by-election rather than the one up in Wakefield. So there we are. And I've been asked for tips on where to stay and so on. So without further ado, over to you, Liz Pole, Labour Party.
Thanks very much. So I'm Liz Pole, and I'm a mum of 2 children who are still in. So the school issue is a very big one for me. They're 18 and 16, and they're doing their A-levels and their GCSEs at the moment. So you can imagine it's, all go in our house. It's quite a big, quite a lot for all of us to be doing at the same time. But then I just sort of think, well, we did all get through the pandemic together, and so that was another very difficult time. I lost my dad during the pandemic. We weren't able to see him for 2 years, except for sort of through doorways and things, and then we weren't able to visit him in the hospital, and I wasn't able to be with him when he died. And I just think, that's just my story. Everybody has those stories, and I just think that lack of integrity in the government is something that is coming through just so palpably on the doorstep. People are just horrified about the lack of regard, the recklessness, and the lack of integrity that's been there. So that's one of the reasons that I want to stand to be your MP, to bring integrity back to politics. We want to have a contract in Britain where we do have integrity, security and prosperity and respect in our country. So we want, as the Labour Party, we want a change of government. We want a confident, optimistic, investing Britain. We want to put money into future industries where we have a business case for them. We want to put money into small businesses, and remember that 90% of businesses in our area are micro businesses employing less than 10 people. And so, yeah, that's a big believer in the rural economy and what it can be, and our young people being able to grow here and live here and stay here and have houses and jobs that they can thrive in intergenerationally.
Thank you very much. Righty-ho. So, we're on to questions. Not surprising, the first question is on the subject of school funding, and it's from Sue Wiley.
Hi. I had two children who are both pupils here when funding for a new school was top of the agenda in 2010. Can I ask all the candidates, what would you do to secure funding to rebuild this school? And specifically to Helen Herford, you are from the party of government. Uniquely, can you secure commitments from government and not only promises? As a decision about rebuilding of this school is being made this year, can you tell the people of Tiverton if we're going to get the money or not? And have you secured a commitment from government?
Thank you very much, Sue. I'm going to keep you on tenterhooks to find out the answer to your last question, because we'll go to Helen at the end. First of all, back to you, Richard.
Well, I'd like, first of all, to thank you, Sue, for that really question. Gets absolutely to the heart of why many of us are here. I care passionately for a good state education. That's what I enjoyed growing up. That's what my children have come to benefit from here in Devon. And so it upsets me that there have been no increases for the last 12 years. And you talk about 2010, because I've got here a quote from the Somerset County Gazette, and this article is still available online if you want to go and see it. The 5th of November 2010, headline, Tiverton High School, Michael Gove promises a visit. Campaigners pushing for new buildings at Tiverton High School have gained a significant victory after Education Secretary Michael Gove promised to visit Devon in person. Well, have we seen Michael Gove since? Yes, we have actually. I think we've seen him twice. We've seen him once visiting students from Ilfracombe Academy, which was indeed invested in and rebuilt. And I suggest that's probably because that's in a marginal constituency. And then we've seen him again in the last couple of weeks. And why might that be? Because suddenly, the 24,000 majority that the Conservatives enjoy here in our area is under threat. So the takeaway for me is let's stop being taken for granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Jill.
Well, I think we may agree, but that education is underfunded. The levelling up agenda should apply to education as well. The South West schools don't get their fair share, and we should be very strong in demanding that they do. So it's not just a quantitative thing, though. I think that our young people require support in many other ways too. Youth services, attention to our future resilience, food supplies, healthy food, public transport, climate change and so forth. I believe that the policies that we have for not only education but for public services in general to take a much higher priority compared to, say, the response to developers and to large companies would be important. I believe in health services, that we should have a fully public National Health Service, and that is also Green Party policy, so that taxpayers' money is not given to private shareholders. So throughout the Southwest, there are schools, not only Tiverton, but are not fit for purpose, that urgently need repairs. They've had to wait, some of them, for years, like Tiverton has. So this is outrageous. And we will not only speak strongly, but we also need to show that the public are behind it as well. Thank you.
Liz Pole.
Yeah. So Tiverton deserves a building as good as its teachers and as good as its students, because it's a great school. And I think new school building would be fantastic for our skills, for our economy in Mid-Devon, for our for the facilities of a regional sports hub here would be amazing, and of a community theatre new building that would be so great for the arts in Tiverton as well. I just wanted to talk about the general problem with this government's investment in education. It's an absolute disgrace that the Conservative governments are presenting 2010 funding as if it's some kind of achievement. But as far as this school building is concerned, I wanted to point to the 5,000 houses that have been built in Tiverton. So that's not only causing overcrowding in the school, but each of those houses generates £70,000 of profit for the developer. Across those numbers of houses, that's £350 million worth of profit that has been generated by investment by those house builders in building all these new houses. And perhaps I might put it to you that some of that £350 million profit could have been put towards building a new high school here instead of just going away out of our area in profits for shareholders. So I would also like to bring your attention to the fact that we've had £1 million spent on the school in the last 3 years in fixing roofs and things. It's a bad investment. This is a government of bad investments.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. And to go back to Sue's original question, you had a chance to discuss this with the Prime Minister. What did you tell him?
So, answer to your question, you're asking me, have we secured the funding for Tiverton High? I'm not the MP, so I would not be privileged to that information. But what I will tell you is that I have had lots of visitors. Yes, you're absolutely right. We have had many ministers come down, and I have been exploiting that, and I have been lobbying left, right and centre and bending their ear about how much we need a new school here. So I've been taking full advantage of all the opportunities that have been given to me. I will also say that we absolutely, without doubt, need a new school here. And I would back this 1,000,000,000%. But I am the only person at this table, who will work with the government to make sure you get that funding, not moan or bitch or go back to 2010, where it was a coalition, by the way. It wasn't just a Conservative government. I will deliver for you. I only care about Tiverton Honiton. I won't be going to Westminster to play party politics. I'll be going to make sure that I can get the funding for Tiverton High School and all the other priorities that you care about. That is my only agenda, because I am invested in this area, because I am part of this area. Thank you.
Helen, you didn't use up your allotted time. Did you discuss this with the PM? I'm sure people here would be interested to know what he said to you.
I'm not going to disclose everything, but I did. My first priority, he asked me what my first 3 priorities were, and I said Tiverton High was right at the top, and I told him exactly why. So I'm going to just say that's exactly what I've done, and I'm laying that out to you today.
Can I ask why you think you may do it any better than our previous Conservative MP, who didn't manage to move it forward?
Am I answering your questions?
Yes. Just one very quick one. So I won't have too much before. Helen, just to quickly come back on that.
Because I'm Helen Herford, and when I set my eyes on something, I don't stop.
Okay. Very good. Now, I'm sure we could spend ages on funding of Tiverton High School, but there are lots of questions to get through. So we've mentioned the Prime Minister. I've got the second question is from Molly Furness, who wants to ask about the Prime Minister's character, I believe. I think it's Molly over there.
Good evening. In light of the resignations of 2 ethics advisors in less than 2 years, what is your personal view, please, on the moral character of Boris Johnson?
Lots of applause there for the Prime Minister, I think. Liz, over to you first.
It's hard to know where to start. I mean, just the lies, just the repeated lies, the brazenness of then, pretending that he didn't lie in Parliament. I'm sort of almost speechless. I mean, people are just so upset about it. There's such a stain on British democracy. And, just the words, the brass neck of the man, people have been lifelong, people tell me that they've been voting Conservative since they were 18, married couples who've been together for that long, and they are, not doing it again. They've had it, it's just sticks in their neck. So I think, basically, Boris Johnson he's got to go.
Thank you very much. Jill Westcott.
The question is about Boris Johnson's character, and I am concerned that he might be seen as one bad apple. So the Conservative Party voted for him as their leader, knowing that he was a liar, the 350 million, for example, and they may have heard that he was fired from the Telegraph for making up stories about Europe. So what does it say about the party that they have confirmed him as the Prime Minister? And are they saying that they are okay with lying, that they are okay with breaking rules, that they're okay with changing the ministerial code, that they're okay with voting for increased poverty when they took away the £20 on universal credit, they're okay with hungry children? So there is an issue about our Prime Minister's character, but I'm afraid it's wider than that. And I'm very concerned about our political system, as I've told you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Helen Herford.
So the first part of that question, I believe, was about the resignation of the ethics advisors. It's very Westminstery. That's the expression that I can use. I'm not in Westminster, but my understanding is it was a commercially sensitive issue. That's what I've been told of. Thank you very much. With regards to our Prime Minister, I believe that he's honest in his relation to the pledges that he makes. The pledges to support us during the COVID. I wouldn't have a business, and I certainly wouldn't have a house if it hadn't have been for the grants that were administered. We wouldn't be open now if it hadn't have been for the rollout of our vaccinations. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. We were the first to do so. The pledges to support us with a 37 billion plan to help us with the cost of living. Once again, the government is supporting us. And also the support and leadership he has shown with Putin's war against Ukraine. And there is a statement from the President of the Ukraine, Prime Minister of Ukraine, who encourages and is thankful that we still have that Prime Minister. It is very easy to stand on the sidelines and attack and be aggressive. And what I'm hearing on the doorsteps is that people are fed up of it. They They are sick to death of it. And what they want to hear is how we are going to support it with the cost of living, which is affecting us all. It's affecting us from petrol in our cars to how we're going to heat, and how we are going to heat our homes.
I think to be fair, the question was about the Prime Minister's character. Do you have any concerns about his character?
I don't have concerns that his pledges are honest. I have no concerns that his pledges are honest.
Okay. Thank you very much. Richard Ford from the Liberal Democrat.
Well, seeing as we're in a school, then I think I'll draw on literature with this one. I'm going to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, who said something like, to lose one ethics advisor could be regarded as misfortune, but to lose two ethics advisors can only be carelessness. I think, Molly, you raise a great question, and it's one that we absolutely all of us have to really think very hard about, actually, in this by-election. Not only has the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, been ethically compromised, he's also been compromised in terms of the law. I think he's surely the first Prime Minister in history who is found to have been breaking the law. And this is about leadership. Let's just think about that for a moment. 148 of the MPs who see him up close and personal voted at the beginning of last week that they have no confidence in Boris Johnson as the leader of their party. And I've got to say, if they don't have confidence in him as the leader of their party, then why on earth should we have confidence in him as the Prime Minister of our country? The good news is that we are very fortunate because we here in Tiverton and beyond in our communities, we've been given the opportunity to speak for the country on the 23rd of June, and we can get the Prime Minister out.
Okay, right, we're moving on to our third question, which is the thing I think concerning most of us at the moment, which is the cost of living crisis. And this question is from Felicity Salter.
Thank you. After 12 years of a Tory government, 2 people working full-time with two children under 10 cannot afford basic living costs. How would you make this change? And I'm just using that as an illustration, but actually single people living in single homes who may not be in full fit. We aren't looking after the people we should be looking after. How would you change it?
Thank you very much, Felicity. Jill, maybe I could turn to you first.
Okay. Thank you for the question. The cost of living crisis is hurting a lot of people. So the Green Party have been calling since January for an uplift to universal credit of £40 rather than the £20 proposed. It's not a crisis which can be solved by a one-off cash grant. It needs a long-term solution. But it's not just the poorest who are suffering. So I want to say 2 other things. One is about accommodation and rents and house prices. And the other is that I think, well, let me start with the accommodation. We in the West Country have seen a huge increase in rents and in house prices, and homelessness is unfortunately rising. But our housing policy could be oriented to housing need. And it could be that we make the better use of the housing stock we already have. We also have no fund at present for community-led housing, for community groups to have houses for local people. So that could be remedied and the funding could be put back into that. The other thing about the cost of living is fuel prices, which, as we've just seen, have been skyrocketing. So the government has talked about reducing the taxation on fuel prices. That too is a short-term thing, which could help in the current situation. But however, longer term, do we have to be reliant on expensive fossil fuels and even more expensive nuclear power? Okay, the Chancellor has okayed drilling in the North Sea, but why not spend on the cheaper green stuff, which can turn around quickly and insulate our homes so we have lower bills?
Thank you very much. Liz.
So I agree with you, Jill. The house price pressure on families in this area is extraordinary. And we have seen, the prices increase £200,000 on average from about under 40,000 in the past 20 years, at the same time as we've seen real wages under the last Labour government went up £8,700. We've seen real wages decline under this government. But I would like also to talk about, Helen's reference to the cost of living fund and to Richard's comment about leadership. And, basically the Labour Party is leading this country because we're the ones who've been pushing for over 5 months for the U-turn from the government on the North Sea profits windfall tax. And so it's Labour that are coming up with the ideas and the government who are following. We're calling for an emergency budget. We do need to take the VAT off fuel. We want to see the winter homes payments extended. We want to take the national insurance increase off. It was the wrong tax at the wrong time. Labour's got a policy for a children's recovery plan. It's money that's sitting in the Treasury for pandemic recovery. You would have thought the time was now for pandemic recovery thing. Sitting in the Treasury, unearmarked. We want to put it all into breakfast clubs and after-school clubs in every school so that parents have immediate relief, working parents to be able to go out and not have to cover those childcare costs at the same time as getting students into the right place they need to be for small group tutoring, for playing, doing drama, doing sports, and all the great things that we want to see children doing.
Thank you very much, Liz. Richard Ford.
Well, I've got to say, Felicity, that story that you've just described of 2 children under 10 and 2 adults working all the hours God sends, still can't get by, is one that I've heard a lot about in the last month of campaigning on doorsteps. This is not isolated incidents. Places like ours have got real pockets of poverty and deprivation. And I mean, the sorts of price rises we're talking about here, we've seen a weekly shop it's gone up in cost by more than £25 per week in the last 12 months. And that's in a year when wages have fallen by an average of £65 per week. We've seen the energy price cap rise in April, meaning that energy is now costing people on average £700 more. That's going to rise again in October, another £800 that people are going to have to find, but from where? The crisis would be bad enough if it were not for the fact that the government is introducing a national insurance rise at a time when other G7 economies are keeping tax the same or reducing it. In the Liberal Democrats, we would like to have a rural fuel duty relief of 10 pence. We have this already in the Highlands of Scotland, in Wales, and in one postcode in North Devon. North Devon again, it's that marginal seat that the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats fight over. And lastly, we would like to see a VAT cut of 2.5%, because that could put £600 back in people's pockets immediately. But I fear that our constituency is one that the Conservatives have tended to take for granted, and I'm concerned under their stewardship we're not going to see these changes.
Richard, thank you very much. finally on this one, over to you, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. It's one that I hear over and over on the doorsteps. The highest concern is about our cost of living. We know that this is a global crisis. This isn't a UK cooked up crisis. We know that we are in unprecedented times. That is nothing's hidden. That is a fact. We know that we are in for a tough time. We're all in for a tough time. I'm feeling it too. I'm not from a privileged background. I struggle just like everybody else. I have my own business and I worry about what my future might be. So I appreciate and understand your concerns. I did welcome the 37 billion package that our Chancellor is providing. That is going to make a difference of 1,200 to our most vulnerable families. But not only that, it's going further. £400 is going to every single person in October to help you with your winter fuel costs. You are absolutely right when you say this isn't about just throwing more grants and more one-off payments to everybody. Our Chancellor has spoke loud and clear that we need to create a society where there are more opportunities for jobs and more opportunities to prosper. That is the way our economy will grow. And we know that right now, unemployment has been at its lowest. When the Conservatives came into power, it was at its highest. Labour enjoys spending money, not making it. What we will be doing, what we are doing, and how we are funneling our money is in a responsible manner, and what will hopefully help us to recover in what I've already said is an unprecedented times. And with regards to the NHS, it has to be paid for. That is being paid for by the rise in the national insurance. It has to be paid for, but that is specifically just for our NHS. We know we have a backlog that we need to invest in, and that's exactly what we will be doing. As the representative for Tiverton and Honiton, as the person that will work with the government, not against, I will make sure that we get our fair share of funding. Nobody else at this table will make sure you get your fair share of any funding. They will just argue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Now we're changing the subject onto one of the environment, and in particular net zero and climate change. And I see it's a familiar name on my list here is John Burton.
In June 2019, Mid Devon District Council committed to net zero emissions by 2030. This is a huge commitment which we must hold them to. Will each of the panelists tell us what they're going to do? What they are committing themselves to do, come hell or high water, to prevent catastrophic global warming and reach this target?
Thank you very much.
Not,
oh, sorry.
No, there's a bit more. So I'm just warning the panel, not empty, half-hearted, rehashed policies, not blather, not greenwashing, just urgent, honest, selfless action.
Washfield has spoken, and the panellists are on notice not to blather at all. Richard, you first.
Well, John, climate change is an issue that I feel very strongly about. I'm really very, very worried about it. And I think we've got to remember that this room in which we are seated has flooded in the past. And that's in a period where we've seen emissions rising. Of course, on current projections, we're going to see sea levels rise, and we're going to see much more erratic rainfall, and so we will be seeing many more frequent flooding events than we have in the past. And the Environment Agency has warned us that happened at Tiverton High before is likely to happen with greater frequency in the future. So, like many of these things, they're interconnected, and once again, another reason why Tiverton High needs investment. But in terms of what I would like to see, I would like to see far more generation of renewable electricity. I mean, it's something that I care about on a very personal level. I've bought a heat pump. I know that's beyond the means of most people, but thankfully I squeezed in there it with a government grant, because the Liberal Democrats have been very successful in building offshore wind, but we saw the withdrawal of significant sums of money invested in climate change mitigation after 2015, when Cameron and his crew cut the green crap, as they called it.
I think, Richard, you better stop there, because you almost used 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Over to you, Helen.
So I think the question was, you didn't want any jargon or anything, and you just wanted what we're going to do about it. And I'll be perfectly honest, I don't have the answer. I really don't have the answer. In fact, it's my children that tend to inform me more than the knowledge that I have. I do agree with the 2050 net zero target is aspirational, but of course it's paramount. I do agree that we are encouraging our farmers to farm more sustainably, and the grants that are going in that direction is to show a flag that actually that's what we're trying to do. I do agree that we should be providing grants to make our homes more insulated. I personally can't afford a ground source heat pump or anything like that, but I might be able to afford to insulate my roof a lot better. So I think if we all do little things, that will make a big difference. You asked for an honest answer without lots of jargon, and that's my honest answer to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Liz.
So Labour has got a climate investment pledge. This is an investment pledge of £28 billion a year over 10 years to grow world-leading green industries such as onshore wind, electric vehicles, and building retrofit. So that's one of the things that we want to do, something that's in our immediate plan for the cost of living, as well as the climate crisis, is to insulate 19 million homes. We're at the bottom of the league table in Europe. That's just money going out of the roof, as well as an energy crisis. We want to get that sorted out in an emergency budget, at cutting energy imports by 15% and saving households £400 on average every year. We want to double our onshore, we're committed to doubling our onshore wind capacity to 30 gigawatts by 2030, to power an extra 10 million homes, and to increase our offshore wind capacity by at least 75 gigawatts by 2035. We want to triple our solar panel by 2030, back tidal power, and further investment in hydrogen, with transport now being the largest contributing sector in UK emissions. Labour will deliver an unprecedented programme in decarbonising and upgrading our transport networks and embedding positive new trends towards walking and cycling. These investments are investments. This is not current spending. We have a fiscal responsibility pledge. This is investment money. There's a business case for it. I'm a businesswoman. You speculate to accumulate. And we want to do that. We want to do that to put cost of living money back in people's pocket, to be good for the climate and the future of our generations, and at the same time as bringing good quality, high-skilled jobs to the southwest, so that people can live more prosperously here.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's perfect. And finally to you, John.
Thank you. I was there when Mid Devon made its declaration that it would be net zero by 2030, despite doubts that it could be achieved. Our Green councillors have been working hard in Mid Devon, And Elizabeth Wainwright, as she then was, has talked to communities a great deal, worked on the Climate Action Plan, and made sure that a climate change specialist was employed before she was kicked out of the cabinet. But there is a limited amount, as you know, which local authorities can do without national policy. So the Green Party is one of those parties which has introduced the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, which sets out what the government could do were it serious about meeting the climate challenge. So it talks about ecology as well as renewable energy generation, energy efficiency. It talks about protecting our wild places and our carbon sinks, about peat. It talks about estimating our current consumption emissions, not just what gets produced on our land, because as you know, our declining carbon dioxide equivalent emissions in the UK come largely at the expense of outsourcing our industry. But we need to be responsible for our own emissions. It's sad, humanity's hitting the boundaries. Climate is one of them. The ocean is one. So, in order to combat climate change, we also need to clean up our rivers and our seas. They're absorbing lots of carbon dioxide, they're getting more acid, they're getting a threat to marine life. We need that ocean to be in good health so that marine life can survive. And a lot of that marine life is responsible for the oxygen in our atmosphere. So we've lost half the plankton in the ocean since 1950. I would like to talk more about that, but I suspect my time is up.
Alas, just when we're on to plankton. Thanks very much, Jill. So now we're moving on to a topic which is very much in the news this week, which is the question of refugees and asylum seekers and the government's policy on that subject relating to Rwanda. The question we have is from Heather Fellows.
Can I just say an approximation to what I said on the thing? Yeah. I was going to ask each member of the panel what kind of fair, kind and safe system of asylum they could come up with themselves. And as a little add-on to that, could you clear up this, the problem of the confusion about safe routes from countries other than Ukraine, which aren't available? And could you explain why that is and why the misrepresentation of that situation is currently all over the news?
Heather, can I ask very quickly before you hand the microphone back, do you think the government's current policy is fair and kind, or do you disagree with it?
I have to say, I find the government's current policy is disgraceful. And I think, I feel... when it's even found to be immoral by the churches and all sorts of bodies like that, and I personally feel ashamed at the moment.
Thank you very much. Over to you first, Liz.
Thanks you very much. So I was grown up with the principle of the golden rule, do as you would be done by. And this government, I cannot imagine any of them expecting us, if we were put in that situation of being a refugee, to have us turn up in a third-party country and be shipped off to Rwanda. It's just unthinkable. So I think, we do have to, I think that the Homes for Ukrainians policy has been a wonderful gesture of international fraternity. People have opened their homes to people. And, we have refugees coming here. They're asylum seekers. They're coming from war-torn countries. They deserve to be able to have a place where they can recover and grow and become part of our economy and our society, or return back to where they want to go to, where they came from, when the problems are fixed through our work in international diplomacy. So I would like to see a world in which we do restore our soft power in the world, in which we try and resolve those conflicts through the British Council and through international organisations, and by restoring our investment in international development. And I would like to see us working better with Europol, with the French and the Belgians, to stop the supply chains that are with these gangmasters who are getting boats from China, that are allowing them to bring these unsafe, and to stop the social media marketing, clamp down on that to prevent them from exploiting vulnerable people.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, thank you very much. Richard, over to you.
Well, Heather, thank you very much for asking about a fair, safe and kind system for asylum. I think that's a fantastic thing to aspire to. Firstly, I'd like to contrast that, if I may, with the government's proposed Rwanda scheme. We came very close on Tuesday evening to putting 4 migrants on a Boeing 737 and spending £500,000 flying them to southern Africa. It's a gimmick. It's a disgraceful gimmick at that. We have a very proud tradition in this country of working with the European Convention on Human Rights. This is something that Winston Churchill was personally very firmly behind. And we need to work in pursuit of the ECHR. We need to work with our neighbours in the European Union. Under the Dublin Agreement, asylum seekers were able to settle in the first safe country in which they found themselves. And now that we have left, we are no longer seemingly having good relations such that France is permitting asylum seekers to come here very willingly because, well, frankly, our relations with France are at such a low that what incentive does France have for settling migrants in the first safe country in a fair, safe and kind manner? So to sum up, we do need a fair, safe and kind system, but the one we've got at the moment is a gimmick.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jill.
Thank you. You asked about safe routes. As far as I know, there are many countries from which there are no safe routes. There is no right of family reunification. So unaccompanied children do not have a right to rejoin their families in Britain. This is extraordinary to me, and I'm sure Lord Dubbs is totally in despair about it. We could have an asylum system which didn't take 5 years to result in an assessment. In the news today, I was reading criticism that the Home Office is not fit for purpose in that, A, it takes so long, B, it has said that people need to reapply once they're recognised for refugees, which places more workload on the civil servants. Of course, in this time, they are at the expense of having to live in accommodation, and they're not allowed to work or contribute to our society. So that could be remedied. They could be assessed quickly, and they could be allowed to work while they're being assessed as long as they are in touch with the Home Office. We could process asylum seekers in France to make unnecessary the perilous journey and the huge amounts that people are paying to people smugglers. The higher the obstacles, the higher the profits from that enterprise. Of course, if we were to do that, we would have to have a working relationship with the opposite numbers in France. At the moment, we do not have that. So a belligerent attitude to the French, to the Europeans, has not served us in this respect. So an efficient and fair method of assessing asylum claims would not be too much to ask. Just a word about the confusion and misrepresentation you mentioned. The UK courts did not okay the Rwanda scheme. They said, no, it needs a judicial review, but they didn't put an injunction on the flight. It was up to the European Court to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. So finally, Helen, fair, kind, efficient, what do you make of the government's immigration programme?
Well, the Rwanda situation is a very emotive situation. How we could possibly ever understand how it could possibly feel to need to escape from a country that, as you described, a war-torn country, I couldn't possibly begin to imagine. And when we talk about a refugee, my interpretation of refugee is fleeing a war-torn or a very unsafe country where you're at risk of persecution to your next safe country. Now, the Rwanda scheme is talking about people crossing the channel and trying to deter people crossing the channel. They are in France. Last time I went to France, it wasn't war. There was no war in France. It was a safe place to be. Now, what I am opposed to is people smugglers. People smugglers making money by putting children, women and men on a boat to chance their luck over the channel, and they don't give two hoots whether they make it or not. And we have seen that by the bodies that have been washed up on Dover. Now, if this is a way to stop and break a business model that basically murders people, then yes, I will support it. You should not be putting people on a boat for them to die. Now, when it comes to persecution...
Wait, shush. No. No, Helen, speak.
Each case is looked at by individuals. Now, if these people smugglers know what the loopholes are, don't you think they're going to tell them before they put them on and their business model will continue? Of course they will. They're very clever. They have no scruples. So yes, I do support this, but I do believe that people should be treated fairly and kindly. And I do believe this should be continued to be looked at and to be reviewed to make sure that when people are taken to Rwanda, and it will happen, that they are treated kindly and fairly. That is what I believe.
Thank you very much. So we've got about 15 minutes left for questions. What I'm going to try and do is go through 2 or 3 more, but I'll ask our panel to contain their answers to 1 minute rather than 2, so we can get through 3 more questions. First one is Richard Bunning on the question of agriculture. At the back, please.
Hi. I've come to ask you a question about farming, because I don't think a lot of people know this. Agri-environment support in the southwest is predicted to be cut by £884 million by 2027. That is going to hurt small family farms disproportionately. But it doesn't end there, because that money doesn't just disappear, it flows into the local economy. It's going to punch a £3 billion hole in the southwest economy. At a time we need more food, at a time farmers are being asked to help with net zero, at a time of the cost of living crisis of fuel and fertiliser and feed going up dramatically, this is simply unsustainable. We are looking at huge numbers of small farms going bust. What are you going to do about it, candidates?
Thanks for that very punchy question. Over to you, Jill, first.
I've today signed a pledge to support sustainable farming reform. I do, thank you, Richard. Good to hear that again. I think that our small farms are in a very difficult situation. In the area where I used to live, many farms were not making profits without the basic payments. And I strongly support enhanced environmental land management to enable them to grow food in a sustainable way and to protect nature at the same time. So there's some very good examples going on in Devon. There's silver pasture, there's regenerative farming, there's agroforestry. I think we need more small farms, not less, because they're highly productive. It's difficult to get land to do small farms. Thank goodness Devon still has county farms. So I think there's a combination also of regulation issues. Farmers who have to produce to fairly high standards of environmental protection, animal welfare, food safety, could be undercut from trade deals such as the one with Australia. The inferior produce coming in at lower prices. That's not what the public want. They've expressed a desire for high quality food. The fact that sometimes local food costs more, that's not an issue for keeping down prices to farmers. Farmers need a decent return. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The European Common Agricultural Policy previously was about the more land you get, the more money you get. So with the 1.77 billion payments that were made across the 85,000 farms, 33% of farms got less than 5,000. So that tells me that was completely wrong, and the small farms weren't getting any money. They weren't getting what they needed, and they weren't getting a chance to grow. There's now opportunity that this is fair throughout all of the farming communities. And my neighbour, that's 2 doors up, he will be able to access grants to advance his technology. He will be able to access grants to grow foods if that's what he wants to do, and become a businessman to manage his farm how he wants to do for the future generations. I know there's a lot we need more to do. And so you need somebody who's going to work with you and talk to the farmers, listen, and act. Not shout from the sidelines and have no impact whatsoever. I am the only person here who has already been working with our farmers on 2 roundtables, both in Mid Devon and East Devon, and brought the Environment Secretary here to work with our farmers. I am the person that is prepared to do that, and I pledge that I will do that if I am elected next week.
Thank you, Anne. Richard.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for drawing attention to this issue. £883 million withdrawn from the southwest agricultural economy, but £3 billion withdrawn from the economy more broadly. It's absolutely shocking. And just anecdotally, I was talking to a farmer over a gate the other day who said that their farm had been in that family for 17 generations. But because of the withdrawal of the basic payment by this government, he was concerned that it wouldn't be possible to pass on this farm to the next generation. So what would I like to see done about it? Well, I would like to see the basic payment maintained at least until 2027, when ELMS, the sustainable replacement, is fully up and running. And that happens to be also the National Farmers Union prescription for the situation we find ourselves in too.
Precision timekeeping, thank you very much, Liz.
Thanks very much. Well, this is a government that is a government of that. This government. Sorry. Oh, can I start again?
Yeah, start again.
Thanks very much. This government is government by uncertainty. And Minette Batters said at the National Farmers Union Conference in February that the government does not anticipate and plan for problems, it only responds when the problems are staring it in the face and can't be avoided. Does that sound familiar? This is what they're doing to the farmers. Chaotic crisis management. Labour is committed to pausing the phase out of the basic payment system until the alternative subsidy systems are in place, because we want food security in this country. The National Farmers Union is calling for 60% of our food to be produced in the UK that we consume. Can you believe it? It's currently under 50%. Labour wants to go further than that, because we want to invest in Britain. We want to invest in our farming economy, in our industry, because we want to have an industrial strategy for Britain, and that includes farming.
Thank you very much.
A point of order.
Very quick point of order. Yes.
The decision to allocate CAP funds according to how much land people had was indeed wrong, and it was a decision made in UK. France did it very differently. We had nothing for under 5 hectares. We need that.
Thank you very much for that point of information. Now, what I'm going to do, because we're running out of time, is to take 2 last questions from the audience, and I'm going to ask the panel to answer them in 30 seconds, because actually the questions have been answered quite succinctly, I think. The first one would be your influences on your thinking. I was down the front here.
Thank you. We're in a school. I think it's appropriate that we think about the influences that we had at school, but who are the philosophers, the authors, and the thinkers, 3 of them potentially, that have influenced you as candidates and brought you to where you are today? And regards to your mum.
Thank you very much. Fascinating question. Okay, Richard, over to you first.
Well, I suppose, given that we're in a school setting, I'm reminded of W.B. Yeats. Education is not filling a pail, but lighting a fire. I really believe passionately that places like this are absolutely about setting people alight with what education can do. And I think I'm only going to have time for another one. It'll be Paddy Ashdown.
Ooh. Okay, fair enough. Liz.
Well, the one that's obvious that comes to mind is Charles Dickens. I think, he threw the spotlight on all the terrible inequities that happened under the Victorians, and I think we have come so much further than that to provide a place, a country in which we can have an equality of an opportunity, where people have that dignity in life. And I just feel like this government is just pushing us back into those times. And it feels, just incredibly upsetting in that same way as you feel upset when you read those novels from that era.
Okay, thank you very much. Jill.
Gandhi. Margaret Fell, mother of Quakerism, who was in prison down the road. And that takes me back to the deep roots in Christianity, which I also have. And Joanna Macy, who, one of the things she said was that many people among our ancestors struggled to bring us to this point. And we think about all our descendants go on for so many generations, that we're the only ones who can change things in the present, and we are responsible to all of those.
Thank you, Jill. And finally, over to you, Helen.
Do you know, I hated school. Slightly ironic, I've become a head teacher, absolutely hated school. So, my philosopher is unpublished, and his name was Frank Pike, and he lived at 1 Marwood Place, Honiton. And he was my grandfather and my absolute world. And what he used to say to me, and which is what I've always lived by, community is everything. Be kind, work hard, give back.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you very much. Right, a perennial favourite to end up with. This is Cliff Salter. And I believe it's something to do with marijuana.
What are your views on legalising cannabis?
Ah, classic. Liz.
Well, I think that I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of their life to alcohol. I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of their life to cannabis addiction. I think it should be decriminalised, but I think it is I'm not sure that it's something that I would want to see promoted. I've got young children, 16, 18, and I see that a lot of them are not going to achieve their potential, and I want to see a healthy, optimistic future for my family.
Thank you very much. Which I remember actually being at a Lib Dem conference where your party was debating decriminalising cannabis, and I remember Paddy Ashdown's face looked like thunder on that particular occasion. What do you think of the question?
I suppose 3 lines: regulate its sale, take it off the streets, and remove it from the perilous hands of criminal gangs.
Nice and succinct. Jill.
Yeah, Greens also believe in evidence-based policy making, and the evidence is legalise it, regulate it. It's an addiction, it needs rehabilitation, so not profits made out of it.
Okay, thank you. And Helen.
Mine will take about 30 seconds. Drugs destroy lives. Every police officer tells me that, so absolutely not.
Okay, short but sweet. Thank you very much. Right, amazingly, this is running on rails, and it's 5 minutes out from 9 o'clock. And what I'm going to do now is ask all of our candidates to make 1-minute statements, just summing up their thoughts and maybe respond to some of the points made in the audience. Maybe I could start with you first, Jill.
Thank you. I'm going to return to where I started, which is that I would love Britain to have a fairer system of voting, or a proportional system where people can freely express their preferences for policies and where the number of MPs reflects the number of votes. At the moment, that's very unbalanced. I think, by all means, let's keep the proportional systems we have, but let's increase it, and it ends the kind of dual contest of politics and makes it more collaborative. Thank you.
Richard Ford.
Tiverton has had a Conservative MP for 100 years, and Honiton has had a Conservative MP for 200 years. And while we keep returning Conservative MPs, I suggest, just like in the fabric of the building we see around us, nothing will change. My feeling is that, given that we're in the 84th safest seat in the country, the government is taking us for granted, but we have this fantastic opportunity next week to send a message to the government and say, we're not going to put up with it anymore. Thank you.
Liz Pole.
Thanks very much. So I'm proud to say that here in our constituency, the penny lunches were invented back in the Victorian, back to the Victorian times again. I would like to see this government take free school meals more seriously and extend that given the cost of living crisis. But I also want to talk about that essence of the social contract. So, in the post-war period, we had the social contract. People were expected to have affordable housing. They expected to have buses. They expected to be able to get to a hospital. They expected their children to be able to be educated. And this government has ripped up our social contract. And Labour has a contract with the British people to restore the security, the prosperity, and the respect in Britain that we so much deserve.
Thank you. And finally,
thank you.
Helen Herford.
You're absolutely right. This is a fantastic opportunity. This is a fantastic opportunity for a girl that was born and raised and absolutely adores this constituency, Tiverton and Honiton. Everything that I do will be for the benefit of Tiverton and Honiton, because I am Tiverton and Honiton. I'm not obsessed with Westminster. I'm obsessed to delivering to the people that matter to me. My friends, my family are here. It goes without saying that I will go to Westminster and I will work my socks off to deliver for you, Tiverton and Honiton, and your priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Listen, thank you very much to all of our candidates tonight. It's 1 week and 1 hour until the polling stations close across the constituency. I'm sure everyone here will be out voting next week. It's been a brilliant debate. We've covered lots of subjects. Thank you very much for the brilliant questions from the audience. Thanks for the great answers as well. Thank you very much to the Community Arts Theatre for hosting us, and the Tiverton High School as well. And hopefully next time I come back, it will look somewhat different. Thank you very much.